friend here, Carlos.
It's been a little while.
It's been a while. You were here before that we had a conversation.
Yeah.
How are things going?
Things are going busy. If you're watching on the live feed, don't let the bags under my eyes make you think that I don't want to be here. We've been working hard as we close out towards the primary, but it's been great. It's really been great being able to be engaged and be in the neighborhood and talking to people door to door. There's nothing like it to get in touch with people and find out what your neighbors are thinking and what they're going through, than to directly talk to them.
Okay. All right. And so you are running for the city council?
I am. District 7 city council seat that will be left vacant, and it's actually 10 years since I first ran for this seat in 2007. So I'm starting to feel like an older guy in the race, but experience is good. It's given me a different perspective, and I think about the things that some of the same issues that motivated me then motivate me now. But the experience I have with leadership and advocacy and organizing is much more enhanced than it was 10 years ago. So it's still a passion of mine, still a commitment that I'm looking to honor in my community.
Based on the fact that you say you did this, you ran 14 years ago, and you have some history in government, what are some of the things that you think now that if you're successful in this particular endeavor, what would you do differently than you did when you had it before?
Well, I think that right away I'll start to focus more on infrastructure. We talk a lot about the issues, and the issues are critical, but we have to get an infrastructure where it doesn't matter who is in office. We have, I believe we have fallen in love with the idea that one person can rescue us, whether it's a certain president or a certain leader in our community or a certain person nationally will save us. And we don't do justice to our history of being organized, our history of having thousands of people doing various roles in their community, whether it's the church community, whether it's food programs, whether it's programs for youth. We miss that part of our history from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that gets lost in this generation. And we need everybody to be at the table, not just about a title, but about the work collectively.
You say something that when you said, I said to myself, that's a transition from slavery, where we had the idea of one person's saving us back in the days of slavery. And I think it's important that I go here because I think people need to understand that history. Because if you don't understand it, they'll be writing for you.
Right.
But when the slave patrol used to come on the plantation and beat the slaves, beat the men and children, as well as women if they're not obedient, they always look to the slave master to come out and save them. And so then when I hear that, I say to myself, there's another behavior that transcended time when it passed through generations, where now as people we look for one person in our government who can actually make that equate that to the slave master coming out to save us. We have to understand that no one is going to come out to save us, but we have to save ourselves. The only thing that's preventing us from saving ourselves are ourselves.
That's it. And we reinforced it, before my time. But seeing it in the '60s, you hear the stories of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and we act as if they acted alone, as if they didn't have organizations of hundreds and thousands behind them to organize marches and boycotts and protests and rallies. We have to give them just as much credit to people behind them, because that's what's missing now, is that civic engagement. You were talking about last hour with Domingo Rosa. It does take a village, but not just to raise children, to move our issues forward as well. And that means to get street cleaning, to get snow removal, to get your parks clean. If you want to change the education process, what your children are learning, there's processes to that, and we can't just give that power away. There's 58,000 children in our schools, so let's just say we have 65,000 parents. They shouldn't just turn their power over, their child over to someone that they don't know and expect this person to educate them and hand them back to them. They have to be involved in that process, and that's, so setting up a communication system where for District 7 we have an email, we have text messages for parents, we have flyers, we're still going door to door. Like, those are the infrastructures that I'm looking to set up if elected, so that the community can always be engaged, not just around election time, but around issues, so that we're issue-driven and not personality-driven.
Absolutely. I think when you said that, I was thinking to myself, when my daughter comes in from school, I have a conversation with her, but prior to the beginning of the school year, the school sent my wife and I a copy of the curriculum profile.
Right.
So I knew exactly
what to expect.
I knew exactly what, and being in education myself, I want to know, what is my child learning?
Right.
And what angles are you going? How are you teaching this and all that? But I don't want to belittle the issue. But what I'm trying to say here, and I said directly, is that we have to become engaged. We have to become engaged more than just politics, but in every aspect of our lives and our children's lives. It's easy when you have a family that's a complete unit. And I'm not naive enough to think that, you know what, it'll happen when you have one person trying to earn the bread.
Right. Well, not even just complete unit, a healthy unit. Because you could have a complete unit and it still not be healthy at home.
You got that right.
So, you know, but what you're saying is critical. And there's, you know, something I learned from my father. My father was a coach when I was younger, and he took on a lot of other young people from the neighborhood. That as a teenager made me jealous, but as a man makes me proud, because what I understood was not every child comes from a healthy household, or not every child has everything that they need in their household to be successful. So when I saw my father be able to lend that time and that support, either to help with schoolwork, to be an advocate around education or athletics, sometimes we need a few others to help support those families next door to you or in that school with you, because their children impact your children. Their children impact, you know, your community. So setting up that so that some of us can be leaders, but leading in our own community, leading in our neighborhood, knocking on our neighbor's door, that's the kind of leadership and infrastructure I think we need in the neighborhood. And I think it takes a city councilor not just to look at politics, but to look at the fabric of their neighborhood and be a lead organizer in that neighborhood. And that's what I've had years of experience doing and what I hope to bring to office.
Okay, all right. You know, one of the things about the Boston City Councilor, being a Boston City Councilor, one gets the impression, I should say, I do, that beyond budget, what else do they do? You know, you know, and maybe, and could you educate me on that, because I'm not quite sure.
So, you know, there's two sides to it. There's the political side where they're going to vote up or down in the budget. So they only get to vote yes or no, and then they get to do that for the school budget, and then they get to do that for the overall city budget. But before they get to that vote, they get to lobby the mayor and the administration for what they want to see added to the budget if they want it. You know, there's a game within the game. So they're supposed to say, well, if you want me to okay this budget, there's a few cuts here, but I need this over here. There's also a capital planning budget where $300 million gets split up every year for infrastructure. And I've never heard my district councilor come to me and say, and this is many districts across the city, we're just not as engaged as we should be, saying, okay, let's plan on what sidewalks, what parks, you know, what bleachers, what schools, what do we need fixing for infrastructure? Because we have 9 city council districts, 4 at large that represent the whole city. For Roxbury, District 7, South End, Fenway, and parts of Dorchester, I want 1/9 of the resources that the city splits. And then I want a little extra to make up for the things that we've been missing for years and years. So we've taken that advocacy to the mayor. You know, there are parks in our neighborhood where children play that we need to remodel. So Mary Hannon Park, you know, we lobbied the mayor to redo that and get that in the budget for his capital planning budget, and that got added. Ceylon Park in Dorchester, on the Dorchester-Roxbury line, where hundreds of people play soccer every Sunday. Families were out, and we have no bleachers at the park. So we got together, organized, lobbied the community, and lobbied the mayor, and asked them for bleachers to sit families. So we're getting those in October. So some of those are the job of the city councilor as well. So it's beyond budget. Then you have to open up to, you have to think outside the box. You have to figure out what your community needs. You can host financial workshop meetings for your community so they can learn education around, you know, financial empowerment. There's a lot of other things you can do outside of the building. Much like people say about the church, you have to get outside of the building into the community if you're really going to impact that change.
Before I make another comment, could you ratchet me up a little bit, because I'm hearing that people can't hear me beyond the doors of this studio. So that might be a little better. My other hit was that, with that said, what leadership can the council provide the community in changing the education curriculum here in the city of Boston for the public schools?
I mean, it can start at the city level. It actually has to go to the state level. So curriculum changes are made at the state level. That's something I learned being a state representative for Roxbury and Dorchester. But that effort can be led locally. So it's really about organizing parents, organizing, you know, around that common issue of changing and looking at the curriculum, and making sure it's age appropriate, making sure it has the lessons that we're looking at it. I think that for me as a District 7 city councilor, I would love to start organizing parents. And I mean organize them so that they're empowered for themselves, not organizing for the District 7 council office, but to make sure that parents, regardless who the counselor is, know who the other parents are in their schools, and maybe that's hosting events for parents outside of the school, and in developing a vision that they have for the school, so that it's actually parents should have the biggest stake in running a school as much as the BPS and the administrator. They're giving you their most important resource when they send their child to you. So they should have a stake in terms of what the curriculum is, what the hours are. You know, people are going back to the city and state to make sure that there's recess. You know, we're losing recess. How do you keep an 8-year-old in a chair all day and not let them run around and burn off that energy? So making sure that those changes come back are leadership, are things that a leader in the District 7 City Council seat can show and lead.
I mean, my question when you said that, I said to myself, well, what interest the state level would have in eradicating civics out of the curriculum?
It happens every year. When I was in the State House, I sat on the Education Committee, and there were groups that came up every year that wanted to add Armenian genocide, all sorts of different demographics and nationalities that were in tune with what was missing from their history. And they lobby every single year to try to make sure that history gets added into state curriculum. Because you see in other states like Texas where they'll rewrite slavery right out of the textbook. So
you know that.
So that lobby effort needs to be led, and it start at the city level, but it needs to go to the state level, and that's something where I would join with the state representatives, whether it's Evandro Carvalho in my neighborhood, or a state senator like Linda Josina Forey, and try to figure out how to create a state push for that, because that can be done only here in Boston, but then you can join with other cities that have the same issue.
Yeah, because I'm really alarmed by the fact that a lot of our youth do not understand the complexities of government.
Some of my peers don't understand it, and I take it upon my job to explain it to them. Some of our elders don't understand it still, and I think that's where our city councilors can be of the most service, is really being the political leader of your neighborhood. So I don't want you to find out about budget cuts in the newspaper. I want you to find out before the vote comes down. I want to send you an email. I'm going to send you a phone call and a flyer saying this vote is 2 weeks away. I need you to show up and help me because I'm voting no on this budget unless it has X, Y, Z in it. So that's the kind of leadership that I'm looking to bring. That's the kind of leadership that I expect. So that's what we've been talking about, door to door.
Yeah, because it seems to me that when you have a situation where people do not understand, it's easy for that lack of knowledge to manifest itself into something like Donald Trump. Someone like Donald Trump running our country, running the most powerful country in the world. That in itself is a scary thought. So the question, I said to myself oftentimes, how did this happen? And I'm not putting it all on the lack of education.
Right.
He brought out some very evil and some mean-minded, mean-spirited people as well, and they're serving to divide our country. But I do think, that we need to take a look at, reintegrating civics and government into our academic profile throughout the country. At the high school levels. Denise, I'm pretty much through with my questions. Do you have anything you want to add, fellows here?
How is it? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. Saturday morning, kicking it in the park.
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, kicking it in the park. You started that. How's it going, and what happened to it?
So we've taken a little break just to let families get used to school and go back to school. We wanted to break it Labor Day, but that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's so two things we tried to do. We got Mayor Walsh to redo that park. That park had been the same over 20 years since I was a kid playing basketball and kickball at that park. So he redid the park, and my friend and I, Jamal Warnham, who's my neighbor, wanted to revitalize it. But we wanted to do it in a way that anyone could do it in that neighborhood or replicate it in other neighborhoods. So he took the idea of basketball. I used kickball. I think kickball for us allows more generations to be involved, and it also allows us more. We can have boys and girls playing, side by side, and not really have an issue with it. So we set up the organization to really just be recreational. So we came out and started sharing the word through just kind of word of mouth. And it started out with about 10 or 15 people coming out to kickball, and we ended up getting 20 or 30 to come out every weekend. And what was nice about it is neighbors were meeting neighbors, children were meeting children, and now the park is full of people on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning or Monday when we're playing basketball, and now people are watching the kids, and now it's a safe place for kids to be. And now you see the mothers are taking advantage of bringing their smaller ones over to the park because there's so many adults and so many responsible eyes. So now, my organizing history has shown me that to set up things that can be replicated so that we can all do it. So then there's great men in the community. Manterra and Orchard Park started doing kickball games. Jeff Durham and James Hill started doing kickball games in Mattapan. And that was exactly the idea, so it could be replicated. So kickball costs $20, $10 for the rubber ball, $10 for the bases, and then the rest of it is your effort in engaging the young boys and girls and families in your neighborhood. So it's been great. It's really given us a platform to make relationships with people that we wouldn't normally see or we might pass by. We're hoping to continue it. The fall, because of the weather, we might do it for a few more weeks, but we're looking to bring it inside. And maybe not an athletic component, maybe more of an extracurricular component where we're talking life skills and things like that to some of the young boys and girls in the neighborhood.
You're taking me all the way back to the 1960s in South Greenville when I was a kid. In fact, I was very good at kickball.
See, and that's why we picked it. Now, I ended up hurting my ankle playing kickball because I'm not as young as I used to be, but we figured that everybody's played it. So, it's the same thing like Greet the Children. We greet the children on the first day of school every year, and that allows people to get time. One, they get to encourage young people to be serious about their education. The young people get to see men and women of their community, dressed in different uniforms, come from different backgrounds, and then it gives the people in the community a chance to either bond with that school. So some of them have been fed into mentoring programs, some have supported athletic programs. So it's really just creating paths for people to be engaged. It's a community building exercise because we've become isolated. The technology has kept us inside, keeps our kids inside playing video games and not playing kickball. We're teaching some kids how to play kickball at 9 or 10 years old and never played before. It keeps parents from talking to parents. That you're at the school bus waiting for your school bus with the other kid instead of talking to the parent, you're on your phone. So we're just trying to bring back this sense of community and have ideas that can be replicated throughout District 7, throughout the city of Boston, and really then leads us to doors to talk about civics. So then we're all talking together and saying this park needs this. Instead of having one parent call, now we have 20 parents call to say this park needs lighting, this park needs cleaning, we need street cleaning over here. So it really helps build us our community in ways that other organizing efforts haven't.
Yeah, I'm just have one question on number 6 of this. Churches. How do you see, what are your views on working with families to get the youth into the church and stay in the church and, and be a part of that, have the church a part of their lives?
Well, and I'll try not to make a blanket statement. I think it's to each his own. I think the church is part of the community, right? It's similar to it's an institution in the community, similar to our school. And I think there has to be a relationship that goes both ways. So depending on the belief system of the parents, it would be nice if they could meet somewhere in common ground. Some parents will bring their children to church or raise their children in church. But I'd also like to see church come out of the 4 walls and into the community because there's an engagement that they can start that way. Church, where 3 or more gather in his name, you have church. So it doesn't have to be within the 4 walls. And I actually have other issues I think that our churches could be very helpful with, and I've been sharing. It's actually an idea my father shared with me before he passed. So we talk a lot about, especially in District 7, we talk about gentrification. We talk about the ability to not be able to start small businesses because we don't have the money. And so my father said, we as a people put a lot of money into the tithing plates, the collection plates, every Sunday. And it would be nice if a group of pastors, especially the larger churches, and whether the organizations could back it like BMA or 10 Point, would sit down and say to themselves, okay, we deposit X amount of money on Monday. Instead of putting it in 10 different banks, let's go sit down with one bank and say, we're going to bank with you if you create a credit line for our community, for those in our community that meet this criteria. We want to make sure that there's housing lines of credit, there's business lines of credit, and we will bank with you and lobby that. And if that doesn't work, maybe look at creating a credit union for the community. Other communities do this. They use their money to leverage for their own community. So, us being smart about it, I'm running for a government role, but I heard you say it earlier, I don't think government is the solution. I think government can be a good partner, and I want to make sure that the government is doing everything they can do to partner with us, and I want to make sure they're not doing anything to harm us. However, we have to lead the rest of those efforts. So around gentrification and ownership and engagement, we have to own those.
Well, I do like the idea of actually multiple churches banking with a particular banking entity and having that entity put together some type of credit line for the community in which the church is actually serving. I think that's a good idea. That's a good example of having your economics work for you.
Absolutely.
Because in the black community, when you combine that aggregated amount of money alone is more than what's actually been spent in Russia today.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a huge amount of money, and that's power.
We just have to learn how to use that power. And so for a city councilor, usually you don't hear city councilors talk about it. There's work, like I said, there's work to be done at City Hall, but there's nothing to stop a city councilor from getting a library and holding a town hall meeting and bringing in financial experts to explain that, a 101, a 102 course, an advanced course for investors and leveraging your money. That is something as city councilors I would look to do on a regular basis, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, so that the community, the smarter the community is, the more powerful the community is, the better it is for everybody. You know, I don't want it to be, I've seen it too long be dependent on one person, or everybody rests their hopes on one person. And that is not how you empower people. That is not the mission.
But that's how you empower that one person.
Right, and then but it's easy to scatter the flock when you strike the shepherd, right?
Yeah, you got that right.
Right.
You got that right. I'm sorry, sister. Thank you for allowing me to ask that question.
Question. Okay, so there's what, 12, 14 of you?
13 candidates for District 7,
13
correct.
candidates. Okay, how many seats?
One seat.
One seat.
Yeah. This is a hot topic for everybody.
So my question is this: there's one seat. Okay. So, providing that this one individual gets whoever it is, and I wish you all the best.
Appreciate that.
Have you all decided that whoever that person is, that when that happens, you will back that one individual?
I think when it gets down to one, I think you'll see those that are committed to community continue the work, right? I think that it goes to 2 first, so we'll go from 13 to 2. So I'm not sure who out of the 13 will back who, when it splits down, who backs who out of the 2.
No.
But when it gets to 1, when someone is elected city council, it is my hope, and I believe that a lot of the candidates are great candidates. And I believe that they'll continue their work and continue to support that work in the district. But I can't speak for all the candidates. There's some that I have a personal relationship with, some that I don't. So some people lose elections and fade off. Some people lose elections and come back for more. So it just depends on that candidate and that individual. But I'm hoping that we see the wisdom together, that we are taking note of the best ideas out of the group, and we'll help each other support those ideas if they start to move forward through whoever is elected city councilor. That is my hope.
Because I think both of you make a very good point.
I've never seen that many go after one seat.
1999, same seat.
But
I followed them, and some very qualified and good people stepped up to the plate. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
But where I'm going with this is that we had a similar situation in the last election cycle. But
a little different though.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying. It's different in a lot of, when you look at the nuances.
Right, if it is on the gray area.
Yeah. But where I'm going here is that where she's going is not much of a difference, though. Where you had people who are multiple folks who were coming from the inner city community running for that position, and we ended up splitting a very important vote, and we lost an opportunity to have the first black female mayor, in my opinion, running the city of Boston. So we have the same old thing that we have had for years. All right, and we're expecting different results with the same type of person in the office. So that's my hit. But I think it's important that on your side of it, when the people when they have spoken and they have identified the 2 individuals that they want to run head to head on the seat on this for the seat, and the individual who have lost, be confident enough in their abilities, their skill set, to say, this is who I support. This is the person that I sat next to, that we debated, but I'm more aligned with him, as opposed to with her. And I'm going to put my my resources. I'm going to put my support behind this individual as opposed to that individual. Until we can do that and start walking away from the election with an angry disposition. And then go on into walking away into the night and not participate. All that does is allow for people who do not have your best interest in mind to come to the forefront.
Right, and one of the things that you learned, that I learned, so like I said, I ran 10 years ago in 2007 and lost. I came back, I ran again in 2009 and lost. I ran for a different seat in 2010 and 12 and was elected those 2 times. But staying committed to it is critical. Not only for your own interest, but you've taken a responsibility on as stepping forward in your community as a leader. And you have people that are following your lead, and you have a responsibility to them to keep them engaged. Because again, regardless of whether you're elected or not, we're trying to build community. So if I have 250, 300 people engaged that pay attention to me regularly, I don't want them to check out because I checked out because someone else is city councilor. I still need them, because the more engaged they are, it still benefits my community. When you have Domingos DeRosa here talking about his Pop Warner team, we're all organizing to make sure that park is free of needles and a safe park for his kids to play, because he lives in the same neighborhood as me. The kids that run past my house are going to play ball at that court. So we have a shared interest in making sure that we stay engaged. So, him calling me calling him, finding out how we can support each other. These are the efforts that and I think we will. I think the majority of the 13 candidates will stay engaged. But I also respect the right. It's very personal to run for office.
I definitely understand
deeply, you find yourself in deeply vulnerable positions. And so some people do step away for a little while just to kind of recharge themselves and get back to it. So.
Well, we hope that when they step away, just that happens, is that they recharge and come back, because you can't let one miss target define you, as a person and what you're trying to do. You may miss the target this time, but the next time you fire that round, it may be bullseye.
Right. and again, the key part is keeping the constituency engaged. And so one thing along that kind of line of responsibility is making sure. And I think you started off the show with this. Is making sure we're honest about what a city councilor can do. Because as one city councilor, I often see, with my experience, I see people kind of overpromise. And I guess this is from an advantage of being in office before. You really learn what you can do and what you can't do, or how you have to do something. And that gives you a different perspective. So, fighting gentrification, fighting violence, these are things that we want to see happen. But these are not things that electing a city councilor alone. I don't want anybody to be fooled that no matter which of the 13 of us you elect, none of us are going to stop violence. None of us are going to stop gentrification. We can play a role in it, and that's an important role to play, but we're not going to be able to stop it. And I want people to be honest about what that role is and how we work on those issues. But I don't want anybody I don't want to say, if you elect me, I'll stop gentrification, and gentrification keeps going. You go, you know what, I'm done with politics.
But I think that is really the problem, though, is because that's why I started it off that way, is because a lot of people don't know what a city council does. And then when they don't know it, and the city, which leaves them open to be misled, misrepresented as it relates to.
So let's go back to that. I don't want to miss that. So 9 districts that represent neighborhoods, and 4 that represent the entire city. 13 in the total body. They vote up and down on the city budget, annual city budget, and the annual school budget. They also can pass an ordinance. An ordinance is just a local city law. So it says, you can't keep. There's one that people keep unregistered cars on their private property. Years ago, they passed an ordinance that you can only keep 1 unregistered car on your property. That's an ordinance that only impacts the city, so you can pass a law for that city. Anything that's larger than that needs to go state, like the speed limit just dropped to 25. You can propose that as a city councilor, but then it has to go to the state house and be passed at the state house.
Yeah, which I think is crazy, by the way. You
can't get anywhere anyway, but as much traffic as we have, you can't get farther than 25 anyway, usually. So those are the main and then hearings. A city councilor has a soapbox. They can call a hearing to raise attention around a specific issue to get testimony in, not only for themselves and their own understanding, but for the community's understanding.
Like the injection sites, the homelessness and the drug issues and up in Dudley and
Newmarket Square.
Square. Well, they're kind of slow on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we haven't had. So that's what started really us organizing around heroin in the park. Myself, Leon Rivera, Domingos De Rosa, because we heard about a hearing where there was a hearing on geese and how the geese were impacting our parks across Boston. But we hadn't heard any city councilor call for a hearing on how the heroin epidemic and heroin needles were impacting our parks. So to me, that was, and many of us, that was problematic, and we wanted to speak about that. So that is, a city council can call hearings. They can have a hearing that's downtown between 11 and 3, when most of us will have to be at work. Or they can hold a hearing and request that it's in the neighborhood that's mostly affected by it, and have it at 6 or 7 o'clock or on a Saturday, so that most of the community can get out to those hearings. So there's different things they can do. And even when you can't make a hearing, you could have a town hall meeting in your community and take that feedback back to City Hall and enter it as testimony on your constituents' behalf. So those are the main functions of a city councilor, aside from lobbying for services in your community. So as I walk Dudley Street and Warren and Humboldt Ave, I'm thinking about, where do we need more trash cans? Where do we need a street sweeper? This ramp is not fixed for seniors. How could a senior get up this ramp if they were in a wheelchair or if they had a cane? Those are things that a city councilor could also do and should be doing, and in collaboration with residents. So I want to make sure that's clear. All of this should be in collaboration with residents.
Okay, so let's bring back the next question, and I appreciate this education on the functionality of the city
Very
council.
important,
It's
right.
important that, again, that's why I started off that way. People need to know, this is what this individual represents. This is how the individual represents me, and this is a resource for me.
Right.
So if I have, as a citizen,
Yeah.
if I had a situation that I felt that was important to me, and I wanted to share it with my community, I go to the community and we do our thing, we do our meetings.
Yep.
Is it abnormal to invite a city councilor, the city council representative to a meeting like that to discuss that issue and ask that person to take that to the next level? Would that be something?
That happens all the time. That
Okay.
should happen. So if anything, especially even something small, where there could be a rash of break-ins in your neighborhood, around your neighborhood, and maybe the police response is not what you like, and they're taking too long, or they're not having a good interaction. That's when you should pick up the phone and say, all right, we need the city council to come out. We're having car break-ins. The police are not doing what we want them to do. And the city council can bridge that gap. They should have the working relationships to talk to the captain of that district, to bring in, some city services. So to give you an example, when Menino was mayor, we created a neighborhood response team for Blue Hill Avenue. From Blue Hill Avenue, from Dudley Street to Grove Hall, you could see drugs, prostitution, the whole nine for years. And it was actually one of the things that made me run for office. So after much prodding and newspaper articles and lobbying back and forth and some arguments with the former mayor, he said, you know what, let's put a neighborhood response team. And so once a week we would walk the neighborhood with leaders from different departments in the city. You would get public works would come out, street lighting would come out, transportation would come out, and we'd walk the neighborhood with residents. So it wasn't just the activists or the councilor pointing out issues, it was the residents going, oh yeah, there's a pothole here, and there's a pothole here, and that light is out, and we need to fix that, and they go right down the notepad, and they're fixed within a week. So that's the city council bringing city resources to their neighborhood the way they should be doing.
Well, and I think, again, I think it's important for people, the listening audience, to hear this.
Yeah, it's
Because
critical.
I think there's a large group of folks who have not a clue what a city councilor does.
Again, you must vote.
Amen.
Okay?
You do.
Amen.
If you're a person who votes and uses 311, these things will get fixed. But if you're not, you will just be, they'll get fixed,
Yep.
but on their timetable. You're saying things that are actually correct.
Absolutely, that's
But-
right.
But if,
But
you
tying
go-
it to the vote is important.
Yeah, because there are situations, like I said, there's no way in God's green earth, that little park right across the street from B2 police station,
Yep.
there shouldn't be vagrancy
Right.
over there.
Right.
I mean, seriously, as a police officer, before I even went in there to go to my shift, I'd be walking off the street. Gentlemen, you gotta leave.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, but
A lot of us turn a blind eye to stuff like that, though.
coming back from church on Sunday, I just shake my head because I'm basically disgusted that they're sitting out there, they're doing whatever they're doing.
Yep.
Okay, if you even walk the triangle,
Yep.
you're disgusted. And this is a Sunday morning, so
Right.
you can imagine what it's like Monday through Friday.
Right.
And the police station is around the corner.
And imagine what the kids think about it when the children see it and things like that. So to build on your point, I want to make this point to everybody, regardless of where you live, whether you live in District 7 or not. We have a very mayoral strong system here in the city of Boston. And again, you have 9 district councilors. So imagine you're in a competition for resources. You want your district. I want District 7 to be the best district. Sorry to all my friends in other districts, but that's just how it is. So if District 7's race comes back and there are 10,000 votes, 10,000 people vote in District 7, but 20,000 people vote in District 5. As a politician, whether it's the mayor and whatever the mayor's last name is, doesn't matter. As a politician, you're going to look at the 20,000 before you look at the 10,000, because those 20,000 have asked you for more. They're a louder voice. They're a more organized voice. So now the numbers in each district of voters are the same. There's not one district that has more voters than another. They're pretty balanced. So if you want to demand respect for your district, if you want to empower whoever the city councilor is, whether it's your favorite or whether it's the best qualified, because they're not always the same, but if you want them to be powerful, then everybody needs to vote. Even if you don't win, your vote is counted, because that's what politicians pay attention to. They pay attention to power, they pay attention to votes, they pay attention to money. And I don't say those 3 things in a dirty way, but in a very real way. It takes money to run a campaign. It takes votes to win a campaign. And it takes the position to gain a certain level of power. So those are the three things that people pay attention to, or politicians pay attention to. So we have to, if we're going to play in that game, in that arena, then we have to use the same tools that they use.
If you're somebody that hasn't donated to his campaign, he's not paying any attention to you.
Helping, I mean, during a campaign, people are very focused on a goal. But the end goal is to create political pressure. So as a city councilor, I think another function of a city councilor is to create political pressure on your colleagues and on the mayor when needed. So if I have an issue, I don't want to just go to the mayor by myself. I want a couple of councilors that share the same interest with me to go with me. So if there's an epidemic going on in the neighborhood, I want Councilor Presley with me. I want the at-larges to go with me. I need Michelle Wu, I need Anissa Asabi George, I need Michael Flaherty to go with me on these issues and speak about them. And if not, then I need Domingos DeRosa on the council because I know he'll speak to the same issues as me. So it's building that coalition and being willing to come back to the community when someone doesn't support you, whether it's an at-large councilor or the mayor doesn't do what you ask. You have every right to go back to the community and say, you know what, we asked for this park to get redone. They're not making it a priority. This person might not be an ally to our community. We should think about how we vote for them next time or whether we support them next time. You are the political leader for your community. Information should go through you, and that's why I said one of the first things I would do is create that infrastructure of a newsletter, of a website, so that we can keep that kind of communication going in our community.
Based on, again, this question is for the application of the listening audience. I have my own ideas about it. I'm just going to kind of ask you, based on your experience, how often do you think a city councilor should come back to the community? Or do you think a city councilor should have an office in the community as well as
I think that's a great question. I think Chuck Turner showed us the way that, especially in Roxbury, the best thing we can have is a district office. Because knowing the challenge we have with commuting and the time, it keeps people from having to go all the way downtown. And that way, Council Turner also did a good thing in terms of he had regular roundtable meetings. Now, I think they could be expanded upon, and instead of expecting everybody to come to you, you can kind of also do a roving. So as a state representative, we would kind of do roving meetings. I would hold one in different areas of my district where people didn't have to travel all the way across the district. And we try to do that once every 2 months or at least a quarter. So every 3 or 4 months, we wanted to be in your neighborhood, at a neighborhood association, talking to residents about what their issues were and also what was coming out of the State House. So I think at a minimum every quarter, you're in for a 2-year term, you should be coming back, and if there's a critical emergency, you should be in front of your constituency. And while that's going on, you can still be making phone calls. A robocall, for instance. A lot of politicians use a robocall to get you to come out to vote. They're like 4 cents a call. So you can spend a couple $100 and make 1,000 calls to your neighborhood to organize them around, hey, be safe around this issue, we need you to vote around this issue. Those are things that I would put into play right away from day one.
But as I look at how people around the country are addressing the issues that they are facing.
Yeah.
I look at, in fact, for instance, Hurricane Harvey and Irma.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, where's the representative for that particular community? I see the law enforcement institute.
Right.
The issue in Houston, in Florida, where the nursing home, occupants of the nursing home passed away because of extreme heat. Where are the representatives of
that neighborhood?
So I'm asking myself that question, and as an individual that know that they should be here, or know that they should make a contribution. It's like,
right.
Why are you sitting dormant and not actually contributing to addressing this particular problem?
Well, hopefully they're doing it off camera, but again, in a leadership role, you kind of sometimes you want to be on camera because you do want to lead the effort. So, one politician I used to see that usually did it well was Cory Booker when he was the mayor of Newark. You would see him online all the time. For the snowstorm, he was out shoveling with people to clear streets. But yeah, every candidate, to be honest with you, every candidate and every elected official is different, and we have different experiences and we have different training. So we're not all the same. We're not going to all move the same way, and that's why it's important to have a relationship with your elected official. You need to look at it as a real relationship where you check in, they check in, you hold them accountable, they hold you accountable for things that are going on in the neighborhood, and have that back and forth. and we need to do it a little bit more collectively, and it was a lot more urgency. When I was a state rep for Roxbury and Dorchester, I convened the 12 electeds of color in Boston. I felt as though I was taking a page out of history with the Black Political Task Force and trying to bring that back.
Okay.
With 12 elected officials, we represent at least 200,000 people in the city of Boston. There's not another elected official, mayor or not, that can really say no if you're asking for something that the community needs and deserves. When 12 of us come forward, representing such a large, diverse constituency, things will happen. I haven't seen as much progress around that as I would like to have seen since I haven't been on it in a couple of years. But as a city councilor, if elected city councilor, I would like to re-energize that body and make sure that they're out in front of the public as a body of 12, saying we are working on education, we are working on financial literacy, we're working on gentrification, not just having candidates talk about it when they're running for office and then not hear about it again until the next campaign.
My other question is around youth employment during the summer months. It seems to me every spring, when we're approaching the end of school, there's this huge hue and cry about the public entity, the private entity, coming up with funds to help fund the youth. Why can't that be incorporated into the budget? Why is that not?
It should be, and it should be on a larger, I think it should be on a larger, budgets, from my experience of having budgets usually end up as a line item, right? And people usually see it as a number on a piece of paper, and they forget that there's people behind it. You have to have that connection. And so after a year, let's say they put $1 million into it year after year. So you see $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. That's just what you're used to keeping it at. So you might cut it down to $750,000. You might put it up to $1.2 million. But if you're not tying it to what's really going on, so if you're not looking at violence is increasing, or if you're not looking at trends and say, we have more children between the ages of 14 and 18 now than we've had in 30 years, so we need to increase the resources that we're giving to them. If you're not making that connection and no one's elected leadership's not making that connection and making that push, then we get stuck with a level funded. So that's what you'll hear a politician say, we level funded it, or we funded it again this year. We've been funding it every year. Yeah, but the need increased, and you didn't meet the need, right? So, and that's the political leadership of when a councilor comes back to the community and says, we need a $500,000 or $2 million increase. I need you to call this number on this day. And that goes back to government being good partners, right? So I would love to see maybe red shirts come back. But I'd also like to see the community be responsible for creating jobs as well. A summer job costs $1,200 per young person. I know brothers and sisters that spend that in a nightclub on the weekend.
Say so.
So I would challenge some of them to start putting that money back in the kitty. I would challenge people to start paying young people in their neighborhood $20 to cut their grass, trim their hedges. And I know people talk a lot of trash about young people, but they are out there, and they are out there hustling. There are young people that are out there hustling that will shovel your lawn, shovel your driveway, that will trim your hedges, rake your leaves. Domingo de Rosa has a landscaping crew made up of young people. So some of that has to be done on our own. Some of that is about education, about keeping our money in the community longer so that those businesses can hire young people from the community. So again, I looked at government being a partner, and definitely as a counselor would hold them accountable to that. But also I would challenge the community to do their part as well. We have to be self-sustained. If we're going to be independent and strong, we should be doing that for our businesses. We should be doing that for schools and education. And while we're in this government, we will play with this government, but in the meantime, we have to be setting up our communities to be self-sustainable.
I want to put something out before I forget.
But you're older than I am.
Well,
that's how it starts.
It's going on today, and I don't want to forget. Join the Young Professionals Network at the the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts.
That's right.
And the Rocks Vote Coalition as we get our community registered to vote at our annual Get Out the Vote Community Barbecue. All are welcome to attend this family-friendly event. This event is supported by the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts and the Guild of Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. Today at 88 Warren Street in Roxbury at 12 p.m. The catch is to bring someone to vote, not just to come and eat.
Right.
So again,
someone to register, right?
to bring someone to register to vote.
Yeah.
That's today at 88 Warren Street in Roxbury at 12 p.m.
All right, thank you. One of the things I was going to say before Denise had an absent senior moment here, was that you were going exactly the way I was going with my line of questioning.
Yeah.
It's just that we, number one, we asked the community, the private organizations to contribute money toward the youth, then, government should think through, when they think through the budget cycle to include that money. But there's
Right.
nothing precluding us as a community
Right.
from actually putting money aside for our youth.
Right.
Actually take them, bring them off the street, because we have the economical power.
We have it,
We have it.
exactly.
We
We
have
just
to-
haven't
we
organized
have
it
to
and channeled
organize
it,
it.
right, and mobilized it. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all been to, or we've all seen a Little League baseball game on TV.
Mhm.
And we've seen all the banners, and you go to the suburb, you've seen all the banners and the fences from the tire shop, the pizza shop, the hat shop along the wall where they're sponsoring the uniforms and things for the young people in the neighborhood. There's no reason that we're not doing the same. We just have to have the will, and we have to be, we do need experienced leadership that can organize and mobilize people. And that takes effort, and not everybody wants to put that effort forth. It takes, being consistent. There's weeks, and I'm sure, Jeff can attest to this, even when we're doing kicking it in the park, there's weeks where you don't have enough people to play even a kickball game. But you still have to be out there, and you have to offer something for the ones that did show up. And then when you get to critical mass, then you get to critical mass. But people have, we're in a generation and a time where we want everything now.
Yeah.
And if we don't get it now, then it must not be right, and we
That's
step away from it.
That's right.
So, I'm lucky enough to be 40 as well, that I was growing up in the analog generation and the digital times. So I'm a little bit more patient with my leadership, with my organization, and my advocacy, that I will continue to do it regardless of being elected or regardless of a title. I don't think leadership comes with a title. I think leadership comes as a result of your actions and your sustained actions over time. And that's something I learned from my mother and father at a very young age, that, your consistency will speak more than what anyone else will ever say about you or your character.
Let me just ask this one question. This just popped up in my head. As a citizen, as a person who's just sitting back and, living your life and living in the city.
Yeah.
How has the council changed, and the body itself changed in the way that it operates since you were there?
I first started working for the city council in 2005. I worked for Councilor Flaherty, who was then the president. It has gotten more diverse.
Okay.
Thankfully, there are many more women on it, and women of color. You're seeing it change where there are a lot less men of color on it, with no Felix Arroyo, with Tito Jackson leaving, with no Charles Yancey. So I'm concerned about that issue. It's interesting. Some of it has changed in terms of there's a younger council that pays attention to certain issues. But I'm still concerned that some of it is still business as usual. Again, it usually takes something of a groundswell from the community to create a change in the institution that runs the same, was used to run the same way. But I do think, because it's a younger council, that they're becoming more reflective of what the city looks like, the demographic of the city. And I'm hoping that continues, but I still think they need a push. I think there's urgent city issues that don't get the attention that they deserve. So, for instance, Newmarket and the heroin epidemic. That's been going on for 3 years, and people have been driving by it, and I've only heard a handful of elected officials speak about it, and only then rarely. And it's something that we live with and see every day. I mean, these are people that are squatting in houses and creating arson. There's prostitution, there's drug dealing, there's defecating in public, there's numerous things that go on with it that we see every day, and that we wish our elected officials were speaking about every day, but that we don't yet hear. So.
I asked the question because it's easy for one to actually have an organization that have physical change as relates to the people in the organization. But it's another thing to have substantive change of the culture.
The culture change,
yeah,
right.
The culture change
Yeah.
is difficult. And so where I was going with that is, have you seen, and you answered the question, don't get me wrong, brother. You answered the question in the sense that, people have changed. There's more diversity.
But the culture still
remains the same. And since Boston was predicated on and participated in slave return.
Right. How much have we changed? And that was the idea of bringing the 12 electeds together, because then you can lean on the culture. You can change the culture of anybody when you have 12 strong, well-spoken, smart elected officials lining in step, talking about the same issue with the same regard. It would move the agenda a lot faster, and it would change the conversation. It would change the culture of how we do politics in Boston.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting the hands and the fingers.
Yeah, people pointing.
So, what's up?
Just one thing I want to notify the public, this afternoon at 4 p.m., Boston Communities United meeting, 61 Columbia Road at Mamleo, 4 p.m. Anyone interested, we would love to have you. That's again Boston Communities United at the Mamleo headquarters, 61 Columbia Road at 4 p.m. And this wraps up our session.
Can I give you one thing that's also going on today? At the Epiphany School, the Determined Divas are having an organization meeting about adopting schools and how parents and community activists can come together. So 12 to 4, and that's at the Epiphany School going on today. The Determined Divas are hosting that. So there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Well, brother, listen, I'm happy to have you. We didn't get many calls, but I'm pretty sure that the listening audience is definitely very well educated
I
on
hope
the
so.
different functions and responsibilities of city councilors. And they should ask themselves this question. Have you seen, I should say, your city councilor since the last time he or she was up for election?
And what do they tell you and what do they do?
Exactly.
Well, for me,
Probably not.
we're pretty focused. We're 10 days out from the primary. I'm hoping people will get a chance to hear more about me. People can visit my website at voteforcarlos.com. You can call me directly at 617-318-6318. Again, that's 617-318-6318. The website is voteforcarlos.com. I am committed to this work, whether it's past election, whether I'm elected city councilor or not. So I want people to stay involved, stay engaged, and find out as much as you can about all the candidates that are running in this race, because I do think there's some clear differences, and I do happen to think that I am the most experienced leader with a history of advocacy and organizing that's not really matched by the other candidates. And so I want people to understand that, I want people to learn that and hear what's at stake for this election, and I'll come out and vote Tuesday, September 26th.